I offer these every week along with a guided meditation. Just click the subscribe link below to be notified through YouTube when I post the latest recording. Or if you'd like to join us live, which would be great, just go into the description section below and follow the link along to be able to sign up for free. I want to draw your attention to what I was talking about, maybe poetically, the idea that the arising present, with the arising moment, whatever is occurring, the next moment in the unfolding of reality, can be experienced as a kind of gifting, with us living on its front edge, like the leading edge of a wave, in which the ongoing evolution of the Big Bang universe is living through us locally as who we are moment by moment. That's actually what is true. Whoa, it really is true. So I'm speaking here about experiencing what is true, or experiencing the knowing of what is true, the felt knowing of what is true. And in that felt knowing, as many, many people report, including my own teachers, there can be a kind of ecstatic, broken openness in the heart. Wow. Now that wow includes headaches, terrible things. It includes all of it. Forest fires, natural disasters that just wipe out all kinds of innocent beings, including many, many non-human animals. It includes all of it. And in your place, in my place, and in your place individually, there can be that sense, just like at the very breaking edge, the leading edge of a wave in the ocean, right? That particular wave in that moment being made by the whole ocean. There can just be a sense of, oh my goodness, thank you. So gifting. Wow. Now, if you don't relate to it, it's okay. This is, but it is true. And so since it is true, why not feel the giftedness in the ways in which reality, is living through us? And in that process, very often there's a sense of a kind of love in that ongoing giftedness of the emergent next moment. And also, I do think and observe that as we are aware of, wow, the extraordinariness of the endlessly emergent next moment, a kind of love moves through us in response. And it can help us to deal with passing conditions, with difficult conditions, to us have a sense of the totality of the livingness of everything. So I just want to toss it out. If you don't relate to it, it's okay. I did not like feeling patronized by, people who would teach in various settings I've been in, like they were, they kind of kept this cool secret stuff for themselves. And I just think, wow, the Buddha's fundamental stance was to share it widely. And he was really, in his time, he really challenged the classic hold of the priests, with their rigidities and rituals. He challenged the view that only, monastics could become enlightened. And he really challenged the view that deep practice was only for male-bodied people. And he was not a social reformer per se, but in his own directness, he went right at it. And so I just feel, as the Buddha has taught, we should engage practice that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. And it's okay to look ahead to some of where you might be going. All right. Next. So I got a question from Catherine. See what happens, Catherine? You put a question. Now we're all in trouble here. So, in a good way. So, Catherine's question at 42 minutes past the hour is, I'm new to Buddhism and find it to be overwhelming in the sense that I'm very much a person in my head and want to get things, to totally understand it and be able to practice well. How can I break it down and practice one step at a time to make progress with my understanding? Where should I start? Great question. Many people have tried to answer Catherine's question. I'll share a book that I've just started to read that I think is a really good intro, which is called Buddhish, Buddhish. It's by C. Pierce Salguero, and it's about 20 fundamental notions in Buddhism. It's very readable, it's charming, it's simple. It's not for the true believers who've drunk all the Kool-Aid of the Dharma. It's for people in general. Buddhish. That's a good one. Another good introduction is Saltwater Buddha by Jamal Yogis. It's kind of a memoir of his journey as a 16-year-old who bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii by stealing his mom's credit card and learned to surf the literal waves of the Pacific Ocean, and through that gradually learned to surf the waves of his own mind. Saltwater Buddha. It's a really excellent introduction. For myself, and this will be a segue into my talk tonight, there's some fundamental principles in Buddhism. We can think of the Four Noble Truths, or the Four Truths for the Noble Ones, which I'll speak to in a moment about that part. First, the Buddha observed that life includes what is called dukkha. Dukkha. It's not that all of life is dukkha. It's just that life includes dukkha. This is a very important point. There's more to life than dukkha. Still, there's a lot of dukkha. What is dukkha? Number one, some experiences are unpleasant. Well, we don't like them. Somebody cuts us off on the freeway. Somebody says some stunning thing in the evening news. Your children leave home. You know, your wife tells you how to load the dishwasher properly. You hear about a friend, as I did today, who passed away. You know, dukkha. Sometimes there's unpleasant experiences. Second aspect of dukkha is that even the good experiences end eventually one way or another. And last, all experiences, by their very nature, have a kind of insubstantial, impermanent quality so that we can't possess any single experience. Therefore, no single experience can provide lasting happiness. That is the first of the truths for the noble ones, the truth of dukkha. There is dukkha. It is a complete and troublesome and problematic mistranslation of dukkha to conflate it with suffering. Really important. And a statement that life is suffering, someone might think that way. I think it's obvious that life altogether is not suffering. Life is just life. And for most beings with a nervous system, there are many moments of living that are not suffering. Okay. But there is dukkha, right? What makes dukkha problematic? Dukkha per se is just dukkha. There's no escape from dukkha. After enlightenment, there is still dukkha. The Buddha reported backaches. He probably died eventually from some kind of food poisoning. He lost loved ones. There are, as we say in Buddhism, the first arts of life. There is dukkha. What turns dukkha into suffering is the second truth for the noble ones, tanha, which is well translated as craving. Craving. A drivenness, biologically rooted deep down, that wants to, push away all pain, hold on to all pleasure, and identify with things as some kind of separate self. Well, dukkha without tanha, without craving, is just conditions. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant. Meanwhile, they're all empty of a kind of solidity. They're just experiences. That's just dukkha. So dukkha without craving is inner peace, enjoying the ride, wonder, living at the front edge of now, without attachment, without craving, without clinging. Dukkha with tanha, dukkha with craving, you could feel like pressure, contraction, taking things personally. How dare you talk to me like that? My precious, right? Well, bang. As soon as you add tanha, as soon as you add craving, suffering begins, subtle or gross. So there's this key distinction between the pain that exists in life, in dukkha. There's a distinction between pain and the suffering, the mental anguish, the complications, the conflicts with others that are created by craving. That's the Buddha's straight up analysis of the psychology of our suffering. Penetrating, clear analysis. I think extremely accurate, including in neurobiological terms. So then just finishing here in the framework of the four truths of the noble ones, the third truth says essentially that can be an end. There can be an end to craving that creates suffering. There really can be an end to it, including in extremely subtle forms. And the fourth truth for the noble one is noble, for the noble ones, plural, is that there is a path that leads to the ending, that both embodies and leads to the ending of the craving that creates suffering. These are all offered clearly by the Buddha, not to be taken on faith, but to be understood and explored and practiced with, so that for yourself you can see what is true. This is one very summary framework of what the Buddha taught. Now, Buddhism has evolved. It's been complicated in lots of good ways. Some, I don't know, maybe a little overly complicated over the last 2,500 years. But this is the heart of it, of individuals observing directly in their own experience. What's it like to be you? What leads to more happiness, love, inner peace, and wisdom? And what leads to more contraction, more pressure, more discontent, more fearfulness, more frustration, more resentment, right? It's very pragmatic. It's like this or that. What makes the difference there? And in the Eightfold Path, you can look up the elements. I won't do that right now, that particular list. You can see many, many different skillful means, many tools, many offerings from Coach Buddha, Dr. Buddha, who, observed the ailment, understood its causes, diagnosed its causes, and prescribed a treatment that will eventually heal and cure it. All right? Judge those things on your own terms. Lots of details, but that's the essence of it all. What helps you crave less? Such as more mindfulness. That helps us crave less. More compassion. That helps us crave less. Lightening up about the self. That helps us crave less. Disengaging from afflictive states of mind. They arise, but we don't need to feed and follow them. Resentments arise, but then do double down on the resentment. Desires arise that you know will lead to trouble for you and others. Do you follow after them? You know, practice for the noble ones is as immediate and direct as this. So why do I keep banging on the phrase the noble ones? It's really interesting that the common translation that these are the four noble truths is really a mistake. In the original language, the original phrasing, which was handed down orally, many scholars think quite accurately. Some noise definitely slipped into that signal before the first surviving written record, several centuries after the Buddha passed away, appeared. But in any case, it's pretty accurate. So why would there be the phrase saying, these are truths for noble beings? Now, by noble, the Buddha does not mean caste or class. He is referring, this is very important, not to empty rituals or benefits that people would purchase from priests of the time who would chant prayers of various kinds. No, people are noble in the Buddhist frame based on their acts, their deliberate volitional acts of thought and word and deed. That is what defines nobility. Not gender, not social class, not whether people are monastics. Their own personal efforts in their thoughts, their words, and deeds. That's what confers nobility. So how would it be that these are truths for the noble ones? How would it be that these are practices for noble beings like you and you and you? Now, the word noble, if you don't like it, feel free. You might shift it to something like virtuous, admirable, respectable. Pick your word. I like the word noble. I think it has a fundamental connotation. I've known, my life has been graced by some cats, and each one was a noble being, clearly. You could feel it, the nobility. So, why are these truths for the noble ones? It is because, and here I'm going to talk directly to you. I know some of you here direct personally. Many of you I do not know personally, and I'm still speaking directly to you. What is noble within you already that is drawn to these teachings, that is drawn to a practice and a path of awakening? What is already noble within you, already for the good, already well-intended, already curious, already, how did Cat Stevens, what's his current name? Anyway, on the road to find out, right? What is already that within you, already loving, already generous, already noble, that is drawn to awakening? Can you take a moment and soften? Maybe give yourself a hug if you're moved, and recognize, wow, what is the good already within me that is drawn to learning about reality and opening out into it and feeling and finding an unshakable peace? Yeah. We don't tend to really acknowledge that within us, which is already noble, already drawn to the good, already just wants to help. I was talking with some people recently about deep motivations, and I know for myself, and I think I'm speaking probably for you too, that three central motivations, there have probably been some others, but there certainly have been three major currents running through my life as motivations that I have not always acted on, but I can see the through line. One, I've wanted to know what's true as best I can, as deeply as possible. I've wanted to be happy, and I've wanted to be helpful. I think that's pretty noble. and I think it applies to probably you too, right? So, what is noble within you, already noble, that is drawn to practice, healing, growing, and awakening? And what has been and is and will be ennobled by your practices, by your engagement here, your participation here, your study of the wisdom teachings around the world, including, if you like, in Buddhism. What is ennobled by sitting down and meditating, even if, your mind wants to dart about and you keep bringing it back? What is ennobled within you by your own training and your own generosity of practice and helpfulness to others? Perhaps in practice, you've learned to be more forbearing, a little more patient and restrained, including with people who are so exasperating. In your own restraint, your own practice, your own sila. I see you, Karen. I see that right there. It ennobles you. So what is being ennobled by your own practice? Wow. Including maybe a kind of subtle, growing thinning, as Tina Rasmussen might put it, a thinning between you and ultimate reality, gradually becoming wispier, gauzier, as you feel increasingly rested in what is unconditioned and absolute rather than conditioned and relative. Yeah? So in this process and path of, acknowledging what is already noble within us and observing what is increasingly ennobled by practice, in really simple terms, what is the good that we are growing inside that lasts? There are a number of really beautiful, simple teachings from the Buddha in terms of this process we're going through. For one, teaching is that people are noble not because they can recite the scriptures. People are noble when they are peaceable, friendly, and fearless. Peaceable, friendly, and fearless. Or here's another simple statement. Cultivate the good that lasts and brings happiness. Practice generosity and a mind of boundless love. That's pretty straightforward. Step by step, but that's pretty straightforward. So there are two things that I kind of want to name, and then I think I'll take a look for questions and comments that I think are very accessible for each of us. The first is to give ourselves a break. So all this talk about noble sounds so pressured. No. Lately, I just think it's really, really important to recognize that you are most likely trying hard already. You're most likely already dealing with a lot, including the people you care about, who are dealing with a lot. And I think there's a place for just giving ourselves a break. You can just you can be aware of the feeling of that, right? Give yourself a break. It's sort of like recognizing what's already good in you, recognizing the good you've already accomplished, and, you know, um, a kind of kindness, like, for example, um, I, to a fault, am goal directed. I see a hill. I think, oh, it would be cool to stand on top of there. What a great view. And I try to figure out how to get up there, right? I see a problem. I try to solve the problem. And there's merit, some, to that on the one hand. On the other hand, I've just been sucked into a number of situations where, out of what is sweet and innocent and good in me, just eventually feels like trying to haul a bunch of people up a mountain who don't really care, or trying to make something happen that's just not going to happen. And recently, there's just been an inner admonition arising in my mind that you might find value in yourself. The inner statement is, I can't fix it. I don't have to fix it. Right? You can apply that to maybe a chronic health condition that you have or somebody else has. Maybe you can apply it to a loved one who is just going in circles. Maybe you can apply it to your country, your world, in certain areas. I can't fix it. I don't have to fix it. You decide for yourself, but I just want to nominate this experience of giving yourself a break, which I think actually helps us sustain and persevere the path of healing, growing, and awakening, to just give ourselves more of a break. Sometimes we just have to clock out. We need to eat a hot fudge sundae. We need a bubble bath. Don't go crazy with this, but maybe you need a couple beers and some rock climbing videos. I know what that's like. So, what is it for you? What is it for you to give yourself a break? Feel the kindness in that, the sweetness in that. I think that's part of the path of the noble path, the path of the noble ones. On the other side of it, calling yourself to walk a higher road at many choice points in a day. And that's a tricky one, because it's very vulnerable, that calling yourself to walk a higher road, to feeling like you don't really want to, or you could fail, or you're being yelled at or sermonized or exhorted by people you don't like that. So what do I mean by calling ourselves to walk a higher road? Inside us are many forces, many subpersonalities, many voices, many parts. The nervous system and brain is made of many modules pulling in different directions. But calling ourselves to a higher road, I'm really meaning pausing for a moment, kind of coming up out of the trance of daily life, pausing with not knowing, with beginner's mind, pausing and looking newly and asking yourself, what within me deep down knows what I should do? Usually we can hear way down deep what we should do in the moment. Not always, but we can hear it, and over time you learn the feeling in your body of the voices you can trust. There are other voices yapping away, Yell at them, do this, curl up and, withdraw, eat more cookies, I don't know what, yeah. But underneath all that, we hear the voice that calls us to a higher road, and in ways that are doable. It encourages us often to just let stuff go by. And as the Buddha says, there's no benefit in arguing with a fool. Or use your different word if you like for fool. Sometimes we realize, no, we need to do something that's uncomfortable and stick with it, because that's the higher road. And then once you pause, 3 steps, pause and identify what that higher road would be for you in the moment, and connect with the part of you that you can trust, then surrender to that part of you and that movement into the higher road. It's actually simple. Sometimes we can't locate what is that higher wisdom, and sometimes, honestly, there's so much that's just dragging us down the lower road that we just can't do it. All right. But again and again, if we tune into that part of us that knows the higher road and we feel it, we have conviction and we know it's true. We know it's true. Increasingly, we listen to it. And eventually, in moment after moment after moment, we act upon it. And that acting is surrender, right? You're not forcing yourself to do something. You are surrendering to the currents within you, the feeling within you, the parts within you that naturally move down that higher road. The feeling of surrender. So you're being carried along by that. And then very often what will happen, sometimes within seconds, it crumbles. You're like, what? Where'd it go? You feel like you have a headwind, or a tailwind. There you are. Tailwind at your back, moving you forward, and then burp, tailwind just stops. What? Where'd it go? And then you have to do it again. Pause, tune into that inner wisdom, kind of a wise and loving innerness that knows the higher road, and then give over to it. Let it carry you forward again and again and again. Right? 2 together. Give yourself a break and give over to the best within you again and again and again. And that best within us, in my view, and I believe the Buddha's as well, extends into the depths of our own being, and through them out into the depths of reality itself, including the timeless, unconditioned depths of reality itself. All right. Finishing, I'm doing this right now, looking at your faces, those of you I can see, is to recognize nobility in others. Again, not in this highfalutin aristocracy kind of sense. Just, I'm thinking of the nobility of a fellow who is a taxi driver. I'm recalling him exactly in Thailand. Or the nobility of the cats who've graced my family over the years. Or a little child, whose face is covered with finger paints. Or the people here who are just trying, really, just trying. So seeing nobility in others is good, because then you start to realize, wow, they don't have to be a superstar to have a nobility about them, a fundamental goodness and innate goodness in them. Just you too. You don't have to be a superstar to have innate goodness in you. And to live from that innate goodness, at least some of the time, in some ways. That's noble. Okay. So I had no idea what I was going to do. It just came through. So here we go. Yeah. So I just want to comment on some of what's come through already. So Donna at 54 minutes past the hour, the previous hour. The breaking moment of love was not present when my aunt Angie died this week. It is hard for me to understand this concept. Could I say more about the love one can experience when a loved one is taken away? Well, first, in the moment in which we are full of grief, sometimes with shock, that's what's there. If you already have a deep felt somaticized practice of knowing the arisingness and passing away of everything continuously, well, then the passing awayness of a loved one is part of that larger process. And knowing this is not a spiritual bypass. Tears are rolling down the cheeks. We feel the weight of it. We can hardly think straight. And yet somewhere in the back of us is a knowing of what's also always true. If you haven't yet really cultivated that, it's totally okay. And the opportunity is to gradually cultivate it, but to not pressure yourself to feel something different than what you're feeling when your Aunt Angie dies. And the love that I'm talking about in the giftedness of the arising moment, for me, it's a kind of love. The generosity of the next moment of reality just feels like a kind of weird love. Some people take it further, and they often, through profound experiences of realization, will come to recognize that reality is love. I'm not there yet, although I kind of have a sense of it, but there are people I know who are just awash in that. Okay, and so far I've been speaking of a way of appreciating the generosity of the arising moment continuously is to appreciate a kind of lovingness in that generosity in a very broad sense. Okay, so let's see here. Yes, somebody wrote me privately about the Buddha accepting people from all backgrounds. Yes, indeed. That's as best we know what happened. It took him a while to accept women. But along the way, the caste structure of the time was not relevant to him. It was not a barrier. Okay, and definitely some people should be aware of that in ostensibly Buddhist communities today. That's true. Let's see here. Yeah, dukkha per se, Marina points out, 56 minutes past the previous hour. Dukkha is just dukkha. This was a total breakthrough for me when I realized that all the stuff I'd been hearing for 30 years, life is suffering, first noble truth, the truth of suffering, life is suffering, was a total mistranslation. Which means we're doomed, right? And all we can do is try to practice so we don't reincarnate ever again in this veil of tears. Whoa, it just doesn't seem true. And to me, and actually it's not to me, it's just right there in the Dharma. The radical, hopeful, joyful possibility of the Buddhists is that, no escape from dukkha, but you don't have to apply craving to it. And meanwhile, there is sukha. Sukha is joy, is happiness, pleasure, sweetness, delight. We actually don't have to fear the sukha of life, which is the root of the word for sucrose and sugar in Sanskrit and Pali. We don't have to fear sukha. Just don't get attached to it. Just notice that as soon as you apply craving to sukha, it becomes unpleasant. It becomes dukkha. So, total breakthrough. How to live life with a whole heart amidst inevitable dukkha, which is not the totality of life, but it's an inescapable portion. And in some lives, there is a lot of it. And some lives are like mine are more privileged, and there's maybe less of it than for others, for some others, certainly. Yeah. How great we can live with an open heart and love and joy and strength and courage and feistiness amidst the inevitable dukkha of a life. We can live, as Master Yunmen put it in Zen, with a body that is exposed to the golden wind. We cannot escape the exposure to the winds of time in having a human body. There's no escape from it. But we can still live with a whole heart, with a fundamental inner peace amidst the golden winds. Yes, Karen makes a comment. I see you, Karen, at a minute past the hour. Yeah, what do we do around people who are attached to contraction? The Buddha said that he teaches for people with relatively little dust in their eyes. That's kind of a traditional expression. And I think it's just true that we can approach life with a blessing disposition. As a teacher of mine put it a long time ago, I like that phrase. We can see others, we wish them well, while seeing clearly. And without being patronizing or condescending, we can recognize differences. I recognize people who are farther along than I am. I want to hang out with them. I want to learn from them. I also recognize people who don't have a very steep learning curve. And then I can recognize people who are inimical. They are motivated to try to make me suffer, bring me down. You see a lot of that online these days because there's no punishing of social freeloaders who are ripping off the common space and trashing others. You try to recognize that. As the Buddha put it, I see you, Mara. I see you, forces of delusion and mean streaks. I see mean streaks. Can we recognize mean streaks manifest sometimes in our leaders? A mean streak. Can we call it out? Oh yeah, that's a mean streak. I know what that looks like. Maybe you identify with a little bit of in yourself that you regulate. I can see an unregulated mean streak right there. Okay. And then we make choices about where do we focus our attention. For me, I think it's useful to recognize what's true, protect ourselves as best we can, and take refuge in, among other things, a sense of your own innate nobility of spirit. Remember, ask yourself as practice, what is already noble in the sense of good and well-intended and inclined toward the good, supportive of what is good? What is already noble within you that is drawn to healing, growing, and awakening? And how is your own path of healing, growing, and awakening ennobling you further? It's a good ride.